If those desires are in you, they're for you. And I'm not trying to sound like a super motivational guy. I know it can be inspiring and get the goosebumps going, but this is truth because the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied.
Welcome to the Dynamist Studios this week. I want to welcome Adam Kasix. And Adam is a very interesting individual. He's walked a lot of similar paths in life that I have. And really quickly, I want to jump into this episode because we're going to get right into the meat and potatoes. I want to jump into this episode with a quick bio that's going to introduce him, set the stage, and welcome him into the Dynamist Studios. Adam Kasix is a faith-driven transformation expert, an international speaker, a multi-million-dollar sales producer, and host of the Revolutionary Freedom podcast. He first earned credibility from his own journey of transforming his personal rock-bottom experience of IV drug addiction, a near-death overdose, and regaining his family after the devastating loss of losing them to divorce. As a breakthrough specialist, he challenges people to live their authenticity as part of ending repetitive cycles of frustration so they can experience a revolutionary freedom they've never known before. Over the last 15 years, Adam has personally worked with hundreds of individuals to have helped them transform their mindset, raise their awareness, uncover blind spots, and gain tools to break through walls that have held them back. He's consulted C-level executives on interpersonal relational dynamics, conflict resolution, and team culture. Adam has spoken to thousands on stages from junior high schools to churches to eight-figure sales organizations. He's worked with hundreds across North America, including the U.S. Army, Grant Cardone, and Sheridan Books, as well as working with well-known speakers and New York Times and Wall Street Journal business best-selling authors. Adam has taken 23 years of setbacks, victories, tragedies, and exhilarating breakthroughs and distilled it all into practical yet powerful lessons that will help anyone experience revolutionary freedom. Adam, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thank you, Tim.
What a way to bust in here. I feel like I just got this vibe of like the Kool-Aid man busting into the room, you know. I got to say, I've been watching your content on social media. I've been taking a look at your podcast on YouTube, and I'm going to direct all our listeners to do the same because instantly I'm just so connected with your level of energy, how you show up, your authenticity, your vulnerability of your life experience. Before you came on the show, I asked you a couple questions. And one of the questions I asked you was, hey, if you came and gave us a TED Talk, what would your TED Talk be about? And this is exactly how you responded. You said, hey, I want to end discontentment, live your authenticity, and experience revolutionary freedom. I specialize in mindset and identity transformation that leads to a lifestyle holistically aligned with core values. I help 30-ish-year-old family-oriented professionals put an end to being stuck and the frustration that envelops the state. My approach comes after significant life failures, drug addiction, destruction of my family, combat-related PTSD, etc. I was lost, hopeless, and responded in all the wrong ways. I fell hard into rock bottom. I do what I do to reach people that feel stuck at a deep level or that carry discontentment with their situation but aren't equipped to break through. I want to reach them before they fall. What got you on this journey?
Besides that dark path that I had to go down a couple different times in my life, the issues that I dealt with and the subsequent transformation that led to the life that I currently live was so powerful and so extreme in my life, so night and day, that along this way, I thought to myself, a lot of times I thought it was unique to me. I thought there's no way there's other people out there that have this insane, extreme desire for a bright life of a freedom that comes from absolute fulfillment and internal peace inside. The lifestyle you live, the atmosphere you surround yourself with is in line with what you really do want in your hearts. Proverbs talks all the time about the diligent get the desires of their heart. And that has shown proven itself to be true in my life that I'm thinking, well, as I have these conversations with people, and I told people just random contextual conversations, whether kids' school or whatever it was, or in business, and I'd share little bits of my story, whether it was the drugs or whether it was getting lost and having affairs at the workplace or losing my nursing career that tanked $90,000 a year with no other backup plan, whatever the things were, and then eventually PTSD and having a panic attack in public that I had that at 32, didn't know what that was all about. Little pieces people would be connecting over the years, and I'm like, it slowly formed a picture in front of me where I felt like God was showing me like, hey, this is what you're going to do to feed my sheep. And I'm like, dang, man, but I'm not the church guy. I'm not like the religious guy. Do we go? We do. But I've kind of like been a bit of a black sheep in that world too. And so what I found was that I didn't want to be pigeonholed into that world. And that was a limiting belief of my own. And I know that your podcast, because I took a couple notes on it about helping people live a fruitful life, removing limiting beliefs, and then taking them to the next level, right? You have synonymous language with what I do because I talk about breakthrough and you talk about next level. And over time, I realized there was a demand for this message. And then the conviction came on me to actually get professional with it and create a structure around it and a brand and framework so people could understand these big, heady ideas that I'd go to in abstract space. And they're like, sounds cool, but what do you mean? And then I told you, I enlisted my wife to help me get some of this stuff to a concrete place.
You're telling me that it's hard for people to take that and action it in a tangible way. And your wife is almost like a translator that helps you implement these ideas and deliver the message in an understandable way to the masses.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. What I ended up doing over the last 18 months was look at my path over the 15, 20 years of the things that I've done that helped me get out of those rock bottom or those dark places and bring some health and wellness back into my being. It's all on the crux of living aligned with what you truly believe in your heart, what you stand for, what those core convictions are. But it starts with awareness. If somebody's in that spot, it's like the first thing that they need to do is address the lack of awareness. And the tricky part about that is that if you have pride or arrogance going on in there, it'll automatically keep you blind to the truth. It'll to the degree your arrogance rises, the degree of your awareness falls.
Yeah.
And I had to learn that and then put those practical things that I was doing over the years into an actual structure and an offering that's usable.
I have this thing that I say all the time. Awareness leads to choice. Awareness leads to choice. And it's so true. Like, we have to be aware. We have to be aware of our giftings. We have to be aware of our emotional intelligence. And we have to take that awareness and action and implement and seek to improve to get to the next level, because ultimately you're going to hit a ceiling that you can't get past because people are going to look at you and say, that guy's full of shit. You can only get so high without doing personal work, because the higher level you go, the more professional, the more sharp that individuals become. And you're going to gain access to less and less circles if you're not willing to have the awareness to do the interpersonal work, to change your mindset. I just think you hit it right on the head. And for everybody who's not watching this podcast, if you're just listening, I'm looking at Adam. You look great. You look incredible. You look healthy. You look fresh. You're youthful. You're rejuvenated. You know, and like, here I am. I'm looking at your bio, and you're very vulnerable. You're like, hey, I hit rock bottom. I used to be a drug addict. I'm looking at you, and I don't see that. I don't see the disease. I don't see the destruction. I only see health. I see rejuvenation. I see regrowth. I see spring. I see blossoming. I see energy. I just really see God shining through you. And it's so clear. You have been commissioned to go on this journey. And man, it's so cool to have you here today.
Dude, I don't even know what to say to that. It's humbling. It's you know what it is? It's validating to the responses that I've made in my life, to the leadings that I believe that God was taking me through.
How did you learn to quiet the noise and start listening to the right voice? How did you start learning to have awareness, listening to how God was leading you to change your life, to assemble all these changes to really live your full potential?
So that would be a two-part answer. I'm going to start with the most recent part, which is not the foundation. So this is the part that led to the fact that you and I are sitting together and that other people are starting to get impacted with this story. In 2018, I reached a point in my life of so much situational frustration, not soul level, frustration with not being where I wanted to be with already what I was doing. And I'm like, nah, something's going on here. The long and short of it was I discovered that I was in a state of confusion because I had too many voices in my head. Too many, go do this, go do that, shiny object here, shiny object there. This expert says this expert says, and they're all right. But I didn't know that they weren't all right for me. And I started in 2018, just prior to the launch of my show, the podcast, I had made a commitment that spring that I was going to ignore messages from outside the mission. I got convicted. I knew what my mission was, and I got fed up with how much I was seeking other people's approval and validation for my work that they weren't even a contributor to. This pastor or this past friend, hey, looking for approval because I didn't feel like I like it was enough, right? Or it was up to snuff. So that took me to that launched me into independent credibility and building great relationships with people like yourself and moving on from that place of like, why can't I get ahead? But when it all started early, the first step of awareness. So I'm going to share a little story to lead us into this. It's brief. I get called out of the Army from active duty because my grandmother was on. So this is a little bit sad. So my grandmother's dying, and we were super close. I have her tattooed up here. She was a light in my life, but I lost her early. So I fly from Texas to Michigan, go to the hospital room. She's there, barely conscious. I'm starting to stage a little heavy, but this is not supposed to be that way. My aunt is in there. I walk in, I see the baby bump. Oh my gosh. I'm rubbing her belly. It's so beautiful. I go, when are you due? You know, where's this going? She says, she just looks at me a little bit stunned and hurt. And she's like, Dylan's 8 months old. My cousin. And I'm like, I wanted to die. The point of that story is, even though we think we know, we may not know. And when we lack awareness, much more is at stake than just maybe missing out on something that doesn't affect our lives. It's a silly little story, but it's totally true. And I did live that, and I got past it, and she forgave me. But that was crazy. I could look around in my life in my 20s, especially after 4 years of drug abuse, affairs, losing a career, repossessions, and then eventually losing my family to divorce. I wasn't barely 30 yet, and I reached this point in my life where I'm like, you know, I was already a person of faith by then, but I said, I looked around at the status of my life, and yes, it was wreckage, and not everyone's needs to be wreckage. You can look around and know when something doesn't fit who you want to be or the life you want to have. The same thing applies. And so I just knew at that point I was done taking my own advice, and I said, Lord, whatever you want, I surrender. My wife is a counsel. I have a couple close friends, and if whatever they're giving me that's in line with you, that's the direction I'm going, and I'm not going to rely on my own understanding anymore, which is a scriptural principle anyway, but I was not living that, and I had produced a mess.
Look, you and I know something that a lot of other people want to know, and they just don't make the effort to figure it out. And that is, we know two things. We know a secret. We know the secret of mindset. And the mindset comes from having awareness. And we know how to quiet the noise and listen to the true authority in our life that's really giving us direction and how to guide us. That authority, when we quiet the noise, when we quiet all the surrounding noise and we listen to that authoritative voice, that voice is leading us to be kingdom focused and to really perpetuate what our true and full potential is meant to be. And I went and listened to, do you know who Ed Milet is?
Very well. I was in RXA with him.
You were? Okay. He made this comment one time, and it changed how I view my day-to-day activities. And he said, you know, when I get to heaven one day, God's going to introduce me to this individual. And this individual is going to be just this profound person with so much achievement and accomplishment, and who's loved and is a good husband and a father. And that person is me. That's me living out the full potential that God created me to have. And my greatest fear in life is getting there to the end of my life and not recognizing that individual. And it changed everything. And I think that so much of the world that we live in today, the young 30s professional who are stuck, frustrated, who are just grinding it out, completely lacking awareness of, are they living the life that they want to live? Are they living up to their full potential? They're just going through the motions every single day, waking up, grinding. They're stuck. Their marriage sucks. Their job sucks. They believe that there is something more for them, but there's not any action. There's no recognition. There's no awareness to move in that direction. And I've been listening to your content, and I took a couple notes, and you said two things that really stood out to me. One was, if you feel stuck, if you're frustrated with your life, your job, your marriage, your number one thing is to address this awareness, and whatever you tolerate is what you're going to keep. Ignore the voices from outside of the mission you're on. And my biggest question to you is, how the hell do you know what mission you're on? How do you gain this awareness? Like, okay, I'm stuck. I'm in my 30s. I deserve a better life. I demand a better life. I want to be a better husband, a better father. I want to be a better businessman. Now what?
What pisses you off? Big picture, macro. Look at the world. I don't mean traffic. What do you feel fire in your belly that you have to use your maturity and your civility to control, or else you're going to get out of line and maybe act inappropriate or maybe even illegal? What pisses you off in this world? That's a wonderful signpost to the direction of where you probably belong with the vocation of your life. And I don't mean the workplace, the specific job that you're in. I mean the calling that's written in the DNA of your soul. We all have something. I believe we all have something that's purposeful, intentional, and specifically for us. And the other thing would lend right into that as a segue, and that is, what do you passionately love? And these are not new ideas, but they are tried and true. And I know that if, like, let's say a person of faith, for instance, they're reading through, maybe let's read some principles in Proverbs, because every success teaching ever given, from Ed Milet to Tony Robbins to Jim Rohn, a hero of mine, to Bob Proctor in the Law of Attraction, and you and me sitting here today, everything comes out of Proverbs, the ancient Jewish Proverbs. Everything comes from there. Find out what you love, find out what you hate, and then there's an intersection where we can find out a nice little framework of a pie graph. The third section is going to be, where do you have skill? And some of your natural skills will lend to this vocation work, to this, whatever that work might be. And you can either do nonprofit, you can dig wells, you can feed homeless, or you can be in the business world, you can be in the secular arena, being an influence in corporate America the way that, and I call him one of my heroes. Hero is probably a little strong, but Jim Collins is an incredible teacher in the 5 dysfunctions of a team. I don't know why that's coming up right now. It doesn't seem exactly, but he's written a lot of stuff. He's a man of faith who is a high dollar fee speaker, coach in the business world. Whatever the thing is, you could be a waste removal guy, anything in between. But I'm using these things that we typically as humans will categorize as, oh, this is menial or this is valuable. And those kind of qualitative judgments, I think, are inappropriate overall. I think most of it has to do with what's in there. What do you feel called to? What attracts you? What repels you? And let's see where your skills are built around these topics, and let's try to move forward toward that.
Okay, so now we've gained this awareness. We've realized, like, okay, I'm not in alignment. I can tell I'm not in alignment. I'm unhappy. I know that I'm created for something more. And it's not a menial feeling of like, I'm stuck in traffic or I hate doing this one task at my job. It's something greater than that. It's this overt outward pressure that is just pressing in on you day in and day out. It's relentless, where you have to change. It's just so overwhelming that you have no choice, and you start to make these gradual changes. How do we stay on track? Because just like you and I know, we were in the Army, and one of the things that we do in the Army is land navigation. And you're walking through the woods and you have a compass and a heading and an azimuth. And we both know the people that check their compass every few feet make it to the destination. And the people who check it once and then check it again in an hour never get there, because a small degree of variance can put you miles off course. So how do we keep ourselves accountable and on track as we're moving in this direction?
This comes from the 7 pillars of revolutionary freedom. So the 4-part little framework that I teach on this, and this is part of transformation, the actual transform step. How do we actually transform? When we know our intention, we can take an appropriate action using good wisdom and good discernment and principles. Out of that action, we're going to get a result. Based on that result, which is nothing more than feedback, this lends into the idea of changing our mindset, the way we see failure, because that is a huge, huge boulder that is in most people's way. It has no business being in their way, only because they're thinking about failure the way that they were taught about it in elementary school as a letter grade and red pen, and then you're taught there's a right and wrong. Most of the world is not that way. Most of our life is gray. And so you have an intention. These are the core values. These are what you're trying to get done today that mean the most. You take an action according to that. You get a result or feedback, and then you evaluate that. Does that fit into the overall picture? Does that fit into the core value of who I am? We evaluate, and from there, we adjust or we modify. We continue to do that. This is like an engineering principle of continuous improvement, right? The word Kaizen, and that's out there. It's the idea of nonstop continuous improvement. That process, starting that day by day, moment by moment in your life, the natural byproduct is increased awareness. It's kind of like happiness. You don't get happiness by trying to be happy. You don't become more aware by trying to be aware. You do it by these practical items. I call them simple practical actions, and that's how you stay aligned. A lot of that has to do with using your gifts to the best of your ability. Are you getting up when you say you're going to get up? Are you doing the things that you know you're supposed to be doing? Are you slacking? And all that plays a part into that.
Yeah, and on that token of like, are you doing the things that you say you're doing? You know, I'm at a point in my life right now where I feel undeniable day to day. You know, I wake up in the morning and I feel like I could walk into the White House and talk to the president with authority. And the reason I can do that is because for the last 35 years of my life, it's just continuously been one accomplishment after another. Now, don't get me wrong. Those accomplishments came with ridiculous amount of getting kicked in the nuts, okay? But it's getting myself back up and pushing forward and accomplishing that task. And so I can look behind me and I could say, I set out to do this thing, I did it. I said I was going to do this thing, I did it. I did it. I did it. The more wins that you stack up, the more accomplishments that you stack up, regardless of hardship, regardless of the trial and the tribulation, if you just persevere and you become disciplined, your identity, number one, becomes the person who does what they say they're going to do. But number two, and more importantly, is your confidence skyrockets. And when your confidence skyrockets, you can accomplish anything as long as you're in alignment and moving in a direction that you should be moving to, which I think is exactly your point here. One of my biggest frustrations in life is there's so many men, but women too, but men, you know, I identify with men in their mid-30s who are so willing to just essentially die. They're dead today and they're going to be dead the rest of their life. And they're willing to just accept this mediocrity. And they have the power to totally transform and change their life and accomplish anything they want. And what they're doing is willingly exchanging enslavement. And it drives me insane. I want my peer group to start failing, to get kicked in the nuts, to stand up and start stacking these accomplishments because it changes your entire identity. So I think what you said right there just hit the nail right on the freaking head.
Good. I'm glad it's useful. There's been a lot of blood, sweat, and anguish and failure gone into some of these things to get them simple like that, you know?
When I started, you know, I guess on my most recent venture, I sat down and I asked myself, you know, what do I believe in? What do I want to do? You know, like what are my values and what is my mission? And how I make choices day to day really is a quick decision-making model of, is this getting me closer or further to the goal that I'm setting out on right now? How do you suggest people figure out if they're in alignment and moving the right direction? You know, we talked about like, hey, are we checking the compass? Are we going the right way? How do you even get started? How do you even know if you're in the right direction?
The first step to solving a problem is identifying the problem, right? The first step to a solution is proper and appropriate identification of the problem. So in that vein, there's no real problem here, but in that line of thinking, what we're going to do is it can be one item, it can be 3 items, and it can be 10 items. I'm not going to say, here, sit down a list and come up with 50, but write down a handful of things, take a mental note, a handful of things that you actually believe. That if somebody offered you money to violate those or to be contradictory to them, betray them, you would not do it. Areas you can't be bought. And because most people have a price on what they're willing to do that would eventually violate some of their core values. They have a price. And one of the things I've been pretty good in my life about is not making decisions with money as the number one factor. It's often been on the list, 3 or 4. It's usually not 1 or 2. 1 or 2 usually happens to be, does this fit who I am? Do I want to do that? Does it fit my priorities? And then number two is almost related to it, is like, what's the effect of this on my family? And is this thing going to take me more into the person I'm supposed to be in the Ed Milet language? Or is this going to inhibit that man from forming in me, the character, right? So we have to figure out, who are you? And I think if people are honest with themselves, if somebody's driving right now on the road, or they're on the treadmill and they're staring out the window, man, windshield time, isn't that powerful? Shower time. It's like, in those moments, who are you? What do you stand for? Like, it doesn't have to be saving the world. It might be, well, I'm married and I'm not keeping promises that I made in front of God and country the day I gave my vows. That was me. That was me at 28. Side note, by the way, I got her back. Her and I remarried, that one that I divorced, or that divorced me because I didn't have the balls to do it. I didn't have the guts to leave her, so I became someone she wanted to leave. Like, the ultimate cowardice point in my life. But that lent, the contrast of that lent to me figuring out who I did really want to live as a man. And when you get some of those things down, and those become your immovable foundational pillars of your life, then that means if you're trying to do a career change and then you go get your real estate license, I'm telling a personal story. You go get your real estate license and you realize, oh my gosh, I've been coaching my son's baseball. I got 4 kids. I've been coaching one of my son's baseball for 5-6 years now. And this real estate license is going to help me make some money and we're going to have a good income. Oh my gosh. Then I just discovered, I thought I knew this. You should have known this. In the evenings is when I serve my clients. On the weekends is when I serve my clients. Well, guess what? That doesn't fit into the family priority that I hold in my life as a foundational pillar. I'd rather have baseball practice coaching time or game attendance on a Saturday than make $300,000 a year selling homes. There's nothing wrong if you want to do that. That's not the point. The point is the customization to your priorities in your life to be holistically aligned. That's the point. And everybody has to figure out what those are. If you don't know what you stand for, you're going to fall for anything, right?
Yeah. And this just circles right back to your main point in the beginning of this episode of awareness. How important is awareness? As you were talking, I thought to myself, I guarantee you there's so many people listening to this episode that have literally no idea who they are or what they stand for. I was watching this psychological experiment not too long ago, and somebody put a simple math equation on the board. And you're supposed to just simply raise your hand if you agree with the solution or disagree with the solution. It was something really simple. Like, I don't know, 50 plus 50 is 100. And, the solution was like 50 plus 50 equals 150. And they polled the room. Raise your hand if you agree with this solution. Everybody in the room raised their hand. There was one person that they were running the experiment on. So this person is like looking around at everybody. They know the right answer. They know that they believe. If somebody paid them $3,000, $1 million, $1 billion without anybody else in that room, they'd say, no, that's incorrect. I'll take my $1 billion. But what do? They freaking raise their hand because everybody else in the room is raising their hand. It's like, that's the biggest battle that we fight against. Kind of goes back to an integrity thing. And people often say that the definition of integrity is what do you do when nobody's watching? And I disagree. I think that the harder choice in integrity is what do you do when everybody's watching? Because if everybody's telling you to do this one thing and you know in your heart that it's not in alignment, you have no awareness, how are you going to react? And how much strength does that take? And to really have defined values and mission statement and have an awareness and be honest with yourself is what's going to guide you through that transformational time and really deliver you to the next level. And when we look at people who are experiencing a lot of success and tasting the fruit, they're not going with the flow. They're doing what they were called to do and they're making waves doing it.
Yep. Who was the industrialist 100 to 150 years? One of them, maybe it was Ford or Carnegie, whoever it was, I don't know. If you want to be successful in life, look at the way that the masses are going and go the other way.
Yeah.
It might even be a paraphrase, but that's a pretty close idea.
Yeah.
You can see this on a practical level because I like to lean on practical stuff that somebody can take as they're listening to it and use it in the car if the opportunity's there, or use it when they get home from work, whatever it is. But a couple things come into mind. The angry boss that's always chomping on somebody's ears. And then the other one is a lot of times, and this happens to lend to females more than it does males, I think, but maybe it doesn't. I don't want to speak out of turn here, but it's the cliche of the wonderful girl always being with the jerk, the guy that mistreats her, right? Either one of those situations is that you're tolerating something that you hate or that you can't stand living with, but you're not doing anything about it, so you get to keep it.
Yep.
And it gets to be the way you live. And looking at that, it's like, you know that you don't like this abuse or this treatment of your person, who you are, the way this person doesn't value your worth. Make it be known what you're going to stand for and what you're not going to stand for. And then people have to live according to that if they're going to be in your life. Yeah. Especially if they're going to have influence in your life.
Yeah.
But a lot of this stuff, you have to know who you are, and then comes in the guts to make moves that are probably going to cost you some pain and tears and require a lot of prayers until it breaks through to the other side. The willingness of ending something secure, what we're perceiving as secure, whether it be a paycheck or a comfortable relationship, maybe it's not even comfortable, but it's just familiar. To end something like that, to go through the wilderness, to get to the other side where you do belong, that your heart is begging you to go live in.
Yes.
The land of revolutionary freedom. It's like, man, that's going to take something.
And freaking listen to me. We are called to that adventure. We are called to that struggle, to that hardship. It's freaking literally the point. We're not just supposed to waltz into paradise. There's no contrast. You can't understand sweet if you don't have salty. We as humans are called into hardship, struggle. We're going to learn. We're going to evolve. We're going to adapt. We have to climb the mountain. You can't enjoy the view if you don't climb the mountain.
Dude, and to give you some affirmation right back on that idea, you used the phrase greenhouse plants. And then you said they're not on the side of the mountain or the side of the cliff getting bashed by the winds and the waves, something like that. That is beautiful, because the strongest and most brilliant, colorful coral in the world is in the roughest seas. If the water's still, the coral dies, it goes white, pale, and eventually brown on the bottom of and it's a wasteland. Yes, we're designed to keep ourselves safe and comfortable in our brains. And as people say, it's like, fine. But life happens on the waves. It happens through making those decisions to get to that brightness that you feel you're being called to.
Absolutely. And to change the perspective of the lens that we look through of the struggle. The struggle is a gift. And when we embrace that perspective, life is romantic and beautiful every day. That struggle is romantic. And I'm not saying that I wish hardship on you and I want you to suffer and be in pain. But what I am saying is that these hardships are a beautiful gift that are forming us and shaping us and giving us the ability to bless others, to have perspective, to empathize, and to have confidence that we show up for ourselves, that we can point to a stack of evidence that says, look what I have overcome. Look who I've helped. Look who I've become along the way. You made a comment about whatever you tolerate, you get to keep. My bonus dad, he has this saying, he says it all the time. Oh, you're unhappy with this one thing. Well, based on results, you continue doing the same thing, so you must not be that unhappy. And you made another comment just about like knowing what you stand for. What is the line that will not be crossed, and what is your value, and how can you be bought? You know, what's the price? That's the whole reason that this podcast exists today. We're here because of freedom. I made a choice. I wanted my bodily autonomy. I didn't want an employer to tell me to sit and stay and be a good boy and bow down and you can have your little doggy treat of income. I said no. We are entitled to freedom. I serve one master. I bow to one king. I bow to one king. And I made a choice. And that choice was to walk away from six-figure income. And I have 3 kids and a wife and bills to pay. And there are trial and tribulation and blood and sweat and tears. My life is in turmoil. But guess what? I'm being formed. And there's fruit at the other side of this. And I am enthusiastic for the adventure.
Anybody who's reached a point in their life that they're living in real fulfillment, they've all been through some things. And then a lot of times people will soften the message by saying, you know, I know not everybody's built to do this or built to do that. Listen to me, my friend. It might not look the way we're talking, and you might not hate the 9-to-5, even though the studies all show 8 out of 10 would leave if it wasn't for the money, the job that they're currently in. I'll even ignore those facts, those inconvenient truths, and say this: everybody is built to go after the desires that are purely rooted in goodness or their faith that are in their heart. Steve Harvey calls them the preview of life's coming attractions, is what Steve Harvey calls it. And I love that. The preview of life's coming attractions. Those have been put in you for a reason. If they're in you, they're for you. If those desires are in you, they're for you. For over 15 years, I thought it wasn't meant for me to have a podcast or an influential impact deal where I'm overlooking Tampa Bay in a high-rise downtown, and I have a pool at home with my wife that we've worked together to get. We don't live in a mansion. We live in a neighborhood. We direct every single hour of our time other than when our 4 kids are directing our time with their sports. But we chose to put that in our life too. If it's in you, it's for you, and you can go get it. And I'm not trying to sound like a super motivational guy. I know it can be inspiring and get the goosebumps going, but this is truth because the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied.
Amen. You freaking hit it right out of the park there. By the way, Adam, your gifting, your superpower, just based on the content that I've been consuming, is you come into people's lives, help them identify this awareness, and then act as an advisor, helicoptering above, keeping them on track. You're not going to do the work for them, right? But you're going to help them gain this awareness, listen to what they are innately telling themselves and have an awareness of, and encouraging them to live out their full potential.
Yeah, but I will add, even though I won't do the work, I will cry with you. I will feel the hurt. I will absorb the struggle that you might have with your wife, your husband. I will do those things. The empathy that I've developed over the years because of my own screw-ups and realizing my place in this world, which is, I do believe that I'm little more than a conduit for God's truth into the ears of those who have them, who have the ears to hear it. I know I'm not everybody's flavor, and that's okay. Like AJ Vaden says, she tells us, you're not the expert for the general population. You're an expert for your target audience. And if I don't freak you out too much, then you will have someone in your life that will defend you, fight for you, guide you, be there to forgive every single time, be there to walk you off the ledge if I need to. But no one can walk your path but you.
How transformational has your coaching and your gifting been in people's lives that you've worked with? Forget about being humble, be honest, you know that you have a gifting.
How transformational. So a guy that I worked with who's got a handful of years on me, he started a nonprofit called 3F, Faith, Family, and Football, for kids in urban areas and sports and teaching them leadership principles, right? He says, Adam changes what you can accomplish. That blew me away that he said that, because what that helps me understand is that people like Michelle will say, Adam is a very focused mentor, can help you achieve greatness, would love to work with him again. Like Paul, he was dealing with something with his wife. There's a struggle there. She's supposed to do this and they're not where they wanted to be financially and his part is whatever. If there's a certain life that I want, what's that picture 5 or 10 years from right now? And in that picture, I have a vision of my life. That picture is greater than this moment. So in order to have that picture come to reality, to manifest that reality in my life as a day-to-day lifestyle that I can touch and live in, who do I need to be in that frame, in the picture that I'm envisioning? Who do I need to be able to live that life, to build that life, to make that life flourish? And I gave him this simple idea, and he's like, dude, in 41 years, I've never realized these kind of perspectives. To basically sum that up, it's like, the transformational effect a lot of times is helping people see something fresh that's right in front of them that they've never been able to think about in that kind of practical, useful way. And like I said, if you can't use it tonight at dinner, I don't want to give it to you.
Yeah.
Because I know what it's like to be with someone even that you love and you guys just can't get it together.
And to put the little cherry on top of that perspective is you have to go through an experience to become that person that deserves that life. A really quick example of that would be, you're not going to trust a general to lead you into World War III who's never been in a fist fight, who's never been in a battle, who's never been through the struggle. No, you want somebody who has been battle tested and hardened and has experience. And that is why the lens that we look at through the struggle is so important. We need struggle. It forms us into being the person who we envision in the future.
If you're in the gym, you can't build the muscle without the resistance of the weight. We all understand that idea. Think about your struggle like that.
You're absolutely right. Adam, this has been so awesome. I just feel your energy. I'm a person who just is super attracted to high energy. I have a lot of energy myself. And so I can just tell that you have a divine gifting in this aspect. It's been such a pleasure having you in the studio today. How can people get in touch with you? How can we find you? Social media, your podcast?
Go Adam Kasix anywhere you want to go.
Kasix.
Kasix. If you go to adamkasix.com, it's all there. People can reach out on that site. An offer for this group is if they come from your show, if they want to do that, they're already going to get a free strategy call, which I will give them the best I have. I will not limit them to 15 minutes or even an hour. I want to hear what their heart has to say. Yeah. And then from there, I want to give them some ideas. And by the end of that, we're going to figure out if we're a fit for each other, because while you're assessing me, I'm assessing you. And then we'll see where that goes from there. So that's what I have. And if they don't want the free call, the free download's on there. They can check out my lead magnet.
Don't forget to check it out, guys. I'm going to leave all the information in the show notes below. Check out his material. And as always, if you're getting value from this show, if this is helping you get on your journey, get to the next level, remove your limiting beliefs, become the person that you need to become in this vision that you have of the life that you deserve, do me a favor. Pay the tax. Like the show, subscribe, send it to your friends. Let's build a community that is going to literally change the world. And if you're local, if you're up here in the Tacoma area, don't forget to come hit us up, meet us in person at the Tacoma Pints and Properties event. I have information in my bio below in the show notes. Come bring a deal. We'll help you analyze it. We'll tell you if it's worth making money on or not. Sharpen your skills, build your network. Your network is your net worth, and we can't wait to see you there. It has been a pleasure. To the Dynamist world, we will see you next week.